Dorothy Arnold, the name rung a lost-forgotten bell in my head. It was something I knew, but I just couldn't put my finger on it. Oddly, when I was in the bar, passed out in the hall, or writing on the large couch near the front desk. But when I was in the room, I felt like there were little eyes watching me. The night after I met Dorothy, I found myself unable to sleep in my bed. I had once again gotten drunk and made my I somehow into the hot tub. I remember thinking to myself, this would be a rotten way to die. Some maid would find me, a drowned, wrinkled up prune fattened up on rum and coke and the special water that covered my body. Maybe little chew marks from the passing ghost opossum. This room had filled my mind with strange thoughts a person should never have in a hotel. The whole trip was reminiscent of LSD trips from the 60s. In a way, I felt the ghostly vibe of Hunter S. Thompson. In his case it may have been bats, in mine it was a strange little girl with a pet opossum, and of course the growing fear all of the guests may have been here a lot longer than me. On a little hotel pad beside the bed, I had written, "Watch out for the water zombies." This quickly disposed of after the second maid snuck into my room to check on me. I found it rather odd, how she looked like the first that the front desk assured me didn't come into my room and help me. Speaking of Hunter S. Thompson, he stayed in a number of rooms here at the Stanley. When I interviewed a friend whom had worked on a number of stories with him, they told me tales of drug-fueled nights at the Stanley and playing hide-and-seek in the main lobby spun out on his favorite drink. In a way, I see the Stanley as a home for many of us lost writers that just had fallen through that trap door hidden in the snow. I guess it should be said that Hunter's shrine is not too far of a drive for him. If you do pay him a visit, tell him I said hi. I hadn't really eaten anything for 2 days, so hunger drove my feet back down to the lobby in hopes of finding a meal of some kind. I ended up having breakfast that consisted of the Rocky Mountain breakfast and the Stanley homemade biscuits and sausage gravy. After breakfast I met a young woman working on her thesis for the local collage. According to her, the day the doors swung open on this place, was the day that medicine changed for every woman on the planet. There are a host of disturbing facts we will get into later in this story. Speaking of other things, such as the strange child and her pet upstairs. I admit, part of me expected the woman to laugh, the other part expected her to point and say I had a drinking problem. But I was wrong on both accounts. When I told her the girl's name, she went pale and said, "You may have seen a ghost. In a way, she is a missing person. But she has been missing for so long that she has to be dead, so she is a ghost." Looking at the woman with a very confused look, the one you have when someone offers to buy you a drink and then hits you with a baseball bat. Those looks. The only Dorothy Arnold that has been to the Stanley. Dorothy Harriet Camille Arnold was alive from July 1, 1885 and disappeared December 12, 1910. She was an American socialite and heiress who disappeared while walking on Fifth Avenue in New York City, in December 1910. The circumstances surrounding her disappearance have never been resolved and her fate remains unknown. If you're wondering, I wrote the Wikipedia page, or at least part of it. Arnold was born in New York City, the second of 4 children of perfume importer Francis Rose Arnold and his wife Mary Martha Parks Arnold, née Samuels. She had an older brother, John, born December 1884, and 2 younger siblings, Dan Hinckley, born February 1888, and Marjorie Brewster, born August 1891. Arnold's father Francis was a Harvard University graduate who was a senior partner of Fr. Arnold & Co., a company that imported fancy goods. His sister, Harriet Maria Arnold, was married to Supreme Court Justice Rufus W. Peckham. They were descendants of English passengers who arrived in America on the Mayflower, while Arnold's mother hailed from Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Due to their social standing, the family was listed in the social register. Arnold was educated at the Velton School for Girls in New York City and attended Bryn Mawr College, where she majored in literature and language. She graduated in 1905. After graduating, Arnold continued to live at the family home at 108 East 79th Street and attempted to begin a career as a writer. In spring 1910, she submitted a short story to McClure's magazine, which was rejected. Arnold's friends and family, who were largely amused by her writing aspirations, teased her about the rejection. In many ways writers that end up at this hotel can relate. This prompted Arnold to rent a post office box to receive correspondence from magazines and publishing houses. She submitted a second short story to McClure's, The Poinsettia and the Flame, in November 1910. That story was also rejected. According to Arnold's friends, the second rejection left Arnold dejected and embarrassed. 2 months before she disappeared, Arnold asked her father if she could take an apartment in Greenwich Village in order to write. Frances Arnold forbade Dorothy to move out of the family home, telling her that, "A good writer can write anywhere." Arnold continued to pursue a writing career but found no success. On the morning of December 12, 1910, Arnold informed her mother that she intended to go shopping for a dress to wear to her younger sister Marjorie's upcoming debutante party. Mary Frances offered to go with her daughter, but Dorothy declined the offer, telling her mother she would call her if she found a suitable dress. She then left the family home at around 11 a.m. According to the Arnold family, Dorothy had approximately $25 to $35 cash in her possession, approximately $657 to $788 today. Arnold walked from her home on 79th Street to the Park and Tilford store at the corner of 5th Avenue and 27th Street. She charged a half-pound box of chocolates to her account, placed the candy in her muff and then walked to nearby Brentano's bookstore. While at Brentano's, Arnold purchased Engaged Girl Sketches, a book of humorous essays by Emily Calvin Blake. The clerks who waited on Arnold in both stores later said that she was courteous and did not exhibit any unusual behavior. Outside the bookstore, Arnold ran into a female friend named Gladys King. King recalled that the two spoke briefly about Marjorie Arnold's upcoming debutante party and that Arnold seemed to be in good spirits. King then excused her to meet her mother for lunch at the Waldorf Astoria. King recalled that Arnold told her she was going to walk home through Central Park. King last saw Arnold on 27th Street shortly before 2 p.m. when she turned to wave goodbye for a second time. By the early evening, Arnold had failed to return home for dinner. As she never missed meals without informing her family, the Arnolds became worried. They began calling Arnold's friends to find her whereabouts, but no one had seen her. Shortly after midnight on December 13, Elsie Henry, one of Arnold's friends, phoned the Arnold family home to see if Dorothy had returned. Henry later said Arnold's mother Mary answered the telephone and told her that Dorothy had returned home. When Henry asked to speak to Arnold, Mary hesitated and told Henry that Dorothy had gone to bed with a headache. Fearing that their daughter's disappearance would draw unwanted media attention and could become socially embarrassing, the Arnold family did not report Dorothy's disappearance to the police for weeks. However, the morning following Arnold's disappearance, the family did contact John S. Keith, a family friend and lawyer. Keith arrived at the family home and searched Arnold's bedroom. He discovered that save for the outfit she was wearing, all of Arnold's clothes and other personal belongings were in her room. Keith also found personal letters with foreign postmarks in her desk, 2 folders for transatlantic streamliners on the desk, and burned papers in the fireplace. The burned papers were presumed to be the rejected manuscripts Arnold submitted to McClure's magazine. Over the following weeks, Keith visited jails, hospitals and morgues in New York City, Philadelphia, and Boston but did not find any sign of Arnold. After Keith's search proved fruitless, he suggested that the Arnold family hire Pinkerton detectives to investigate. Pinkerton investigators searched area hospitals and other places that Arnold was known to frequent but found no trace of her. They also questioned Arnold's friends and former college classmates about her whereabouts, but none had seen her. As John Keith had found literature for transatlantic streamliners in Arnold's room the day after she disappeared, Pinkerton investigators theorized that Arnold might have eloped with a man to Europe. The agents searched marriage records but none were found bearing Dorothy Arnold's name. Agents were then dispatched overseas to search streamliners arriving from New York. While several women matching Arnold's physical description were found, Dorothy Arnold was not. After Keith and the Pinkerton detectives could not find Arnold, they persuaded Frances Arnold to call the police. The police advised Frances Arnold to hold a press conference in order to get as much publicity as possible. Frances Arnold resisted the suggestion but eventually agreed. On January 25, 1911, reporters gathered at Frances Arnold's New York City office where he informed them of his daughter's disappearance and offered a $1,000 reward, approximately $26,000 today, for information leading to her whereabouts. During the press conference, reporters asked Frances Arnold if it were possible that his daughter was still alive and had simply run away with a man, as he did not allow his daughter to date. Frances Arnold vehemently denied this, stating, "I would have been glad to see her associate more with young men than she did, especially some young men of brains and position, one whose profession or business would keep him occupied. I don't approve of young men who have nothing to do." Reporters soon discovered that Frances Arnold's comment was in reference to George Griscom, Jr., a man Dorothy had met while attending Bryn Mawr and with whom she was romantically involved. Griscom, Jr., who preferred to be called Junior, was a 42-year-old engineer who came from a wealthy Pennsylvania family with whom he still lived at the Kenmore Hotel in Pittsburgh. Reporters also discovered that, in September 1910, Arnold had lied to her parents and told them she was going to visit a former Bryn Mawr classmate in Boston. Instead, she spent a week in a hotel with Griscom, Jr. Arnold's parents found out about the rendezvous after Arnold pawned $500 worth of jewels to finance their week-long stay. After returning home, Arnold's parents forbade her to continue the relationship with Griscom, Jr. because they found him unsuitable. Despite her parents' disapproval, Arnold continued to correspond with Griscom, Jr. The two saw each other for a final time in early November, shortly before Griscom, Jr. left on a vacation with his parents. After Arnold's disappearance, George Griscom, Jr. was found vacationing with his parents in Florence, Italy. The Arnold family sent him a telegram on December 16 asking for information about Dorothy's disappearance. In a return telegram, Griscom, Jr. denied any knowledge of Arnold's whereabouts and claimed to know nothing of her disappearance. In early January 1911, Arnold's mother Mary and her brother John traveled to Italy by ship to forcibly interrogate Griscom, Jr. They met Griscom, Jr. in his hotel room in Italy on January 16. Griscom, Jr. continued to maintain that he knew nothing of Arnold's disappearance. Mary and John Arnold then demanded that Griscom, Jr. give them the letters that Arnold had sent him. John Arnold later claimed the letters contained nothing of importance and said that he destroyed them. Upon his return to the United States in February 1911, Griscom, Jr. told the press that he intended to marry Arnold once she was found and on the condition that her mother approve of the marriage. Mary Arnold later told reporters she would never approve of the union. In the months following the announcement of Dorothy Arnold's disappearance, George Griscom, Jr. spent thousands of dollars for ads in major newspapers asking her to come home. In the days following the announcement of Dorothy Arnold's disappearance, police distributed circulars with her picture, physical description, and information about the reward throughout the United States, Canada and Mexico. The New York Times continued to cover the story on a near-daily basis. The publicity led to investigators receiving calls from people across the United States who claimed to have seen Arnold. These calls were investigated but proved to be false. The Arnold family also received 2 ransom notes from alleged kidnappers who demanded upwards of $5,000 for Arnold's return. The kidnapping claims proved to be hoaxes. By the end of January 1911, police said they still believed that Arnold was alive and would return on her own accord. Arnold's family, however, said they had come to believe that she was dead. Around this time, Frances Arnold told the press that he believed from the start that his daughter had been attacked and killed while walking home through Central Park and that her body had been thrown into the reservoir. He cited 2 clues, which he would not publicly disclose, that confirmed his suspicions. Police dismissed Frances Arnold's theory because in the days leading up to Arnold's disappearance, the temperature in New York City had dropped to 21 degrees Fahrenheit and the reservoir had frozen solid. The police searched Central Park anyway but found no trace of Dorothy Arnold. When the reservoir thawed that spring, police searched the water but did not find a body. Numerous theories and rumors regarding Arnold's disappearance continued to arise. One theory was that Arnold had slipped on an icy sidewalk, struck her head and was in a hospital with total amnesia. This theory did not pan out as there were no women matching her description in area hospitals who had sustained a concussion. Others theories arose that Arnold had been drugged and abducted, but that theory was considered unlikely as Arnold was last seen on a busy street in mid-afternoon. George Griscom, Jr. theorized that Arnold had committed suicide because she was despondent over her failed writing career. After her second short story was rejected, Arnold wrote a letter to Griscom, Jr. expressing her disappointment over her failed writing career and alluded to suicide stating, "Well, it has come back. McClure's has turned me down. Failure stares me in the face. All I can see ahead is a long road with no turning. Mother will always think an accident has happened." Some of Arnold's family members and friends also said they believed that Arnold had committed suicide, but felt she killed herself because her relationship with Griscom, Jr. was faltering. The New York World also supported this reasoning after they discovered that Andrew Griscom, a cousin of Griscom, Jr., had jumped to his death from an ocean liner after he had been forbidden to marry an English governess. In early February 1911, Frances Arnold received a postcard signed Dorothy bearing a New York City postmark that read, "I am safe." While the writing matched his daughter's, Frances Arnold said he believed that someone had copied Dorothy's handwriting from samples that were featured in the newspaper and that the postcard was nothing more than a cruel joke. Shortly after this, the New York City police announced that they had decided to stop investigating Arnold's disappearance, saying they believed she was dead. New York City Deputy Police Commissioner William J. Flynn stated, "That now seems the only reasonable way of looking at the case. The girl has now been missing for 75 days and in all that time not a single clue has been found that was worth the name. We have no evidence that a crime has been committed and the case is now one of a missing person and nothing more." Police continued to investigate reports of sightings, but none led to Dorothy Arnold. One of the more widespread rumors was that Arnold had become pregnant, had sought an abortion, had died during or after the botched procedure, and had been secretly buried or cremated. This rumor gained some credibility when, in early April 1916, an illegal abortion clinic operating out of the basement of a home in Bellevue, Pennsylvania was raided by police. The clinic was run by Dr. C.C. Meredith and became notoriously known as the House of Mystery, after numerous women from the area went missing after visiting the clinic. One of the doctors who worked at the clinic, Dr. H. E. Lutz, testified to the district attorney that Dr. Meredith told him that Dorothy Arnold had died there after experiencing complications from an abortion. Dr. Lutz claimed that, like many of the women who had undergone abortions at the clinic and died, her body was burned in the furnace. While the New York district attorney said he believed that Arnold had died at the clinic, Frances Arnold said he thought the story was ridiculous and absolutely untrue. The Arnold family attorney, John S. Keith, later told the media that 2 months after Arnold disappeared, he got a tip from an attorney in Pittsburgh that Arnold was in a local sanitarium. Keith claimed that he and 2 detectives traveled to Pittsburgh but discovered that the woman was not Dorothy Arnold. Later, in April 1916, a convicted felon named Edward Glenn Norris, who was then imprisoned in Rhode Island for attempted extortion, claimed that he was paid $250 to bury the body of a young woman in December 1910. Glenn Norris claimed that an acquaintance known only as Little Louie hired him to drive a woman from a home in New Rochelle, New York to West Point, New York. At the home in New Rochelle, Glenn Norris said that he and Little Louie were met by 2 men, one of whom was named Doc and another that Glenn Norris described wealthy and well-dressed. And that description matched George Griscom, Jr.'s physical description. Glenn Norris and Little Louie then loaded the unconscious woman in the car and drove her to a house in Weehawken, New Jersey. During the drive, Glenn Norris said that Little Louie told him that the woman was Dorothy Arnold. Glenn Norris also said that he recognized Arnold and was able to identify a signet ring on the index finger of her left hand that matched a ring she owned. The next day, little Louis contacted Glenn Norris to finish the job. Upon returning to Weehawken, the man whom Glenn Norris identified as Doc informed the men that the woman had died at the home during an operation. Glenn Norris said that he and little Louis then drove the woman's body back to the home in New Rochelle, wrapped the body in a sheet, and buried it in the cellar. Police followed up on Glenn Norris' story and excavated the cellars of several homes in the area, but did not locate any human remains. Years after Dorothy Arnold disappeared, numerous alleged sightings from all over the United States were still being reported. Police continued to investigate the reports, but all proved to be false. The Arnold family also continued to receive letters from women claiming to be Dorothy Arnold. These were also investigated and also proven to be false. The case gained attention again on April 8, 1921, when during a lecture in New York, Captain John H. Ayres of the Bureau of Missing Persons claimed that Dorothy Arnold's fate had been known to the Bureau and her family for some time. Ayres refused to elaborate and would not say if Arnold was alive or dead. The following day, Ayres claimed that he was misquoted and denied that Arnold's fate was known. In the weeks following his daughter's disappearance, Francis Arnold spent approximately $250,000 trying to find his daughter. He continued to maintain that he believed Dorothy had been kidnapped and murdered on the day she disappeared or shortly thereafter. Francis Arnold died on April 6, 1922. In his will, he intentionally made no provisions for Dorothy, stating that he was satisfied that she is not alive. According to the Arnold family attorney, John S. Keith, Dorothy's mother Mary Arnold did not share her husband's opinion that their daughter had been kidnapped and murdered, and remained hopeful that she was still alive. Mary Arnold died on December 29, 1928. Shortly after Mary Arnold's death, John S. Keith publicly stated he believed that Arnold had committed suicide because of her failed writing career. Here is what we know: on the day she went missing, she was seen entering a Stanley steamer. Keep in mind this was 1910, so there wasn't many in town, and she was reported being seen at the Stanley Hotel from 1910 to 1930, but was never found. The woman I spoke with also took a peek at the wallet I recovered the morning before. She pointed to something I thought was bookie marks. Every so often there was a name and a number. I didn't find out what those were until much later.